My first instinct was to run out in the middle of the street to get hit by a car because of stigma. Because of stigma. And stigma is, my mind went back to 2004 when I remembered talking about my aunt being a prostitute and then later dying. My mind went back to my stigmatizing my family and looking at my brother in his face and saying to my brother, well, you deserve this disease.
Ladies and gentlemen, our keynote speaker is Mr. David Robertson, the Voices of Hope. Please put your hands together and give him a loud round of applause. Mr. David Robertson.
So I want to thank everyone for coming. I always get this nervous feeling before speaking, but it's always the nervous satisfaction that I know I'm going to help people. Many of you do know me, many of you do not know me. So I want to start off with you being able to know a little bit about me on some specific dates, because today is June the 7th, 2012 at 10:32 a.m., correct? Yes? Okay, cool. HIV/AIDS was taboo for me being a young African-American male living in Naperville, Illinois. HIV/AIDS was something that happened to those people. When I was a freshman in college at Lewis University, I remember receiving a phone call from my mother telling me that my aunt, Kathy, was diagnosed with full-blown AIDS and cancer and was dying. And my first response to my mother was, well, she's a prostitute. That happens to prostitutes. In 2005, I received a phone call from my mother. At this time, I remember very vividly, I was sitting in my college apartment with some of my homeboys, and we were rolling up some blunts and about to drink, and my mom said, David, I know that it's late, but you need to come to Rosen Hospital. Your brother, who is 6'1", the last time you saw him was about 190 pounds, is 6'1" and 70 pounds. We don't know what's wrong with him. And so I said, well, Ma, he's an alcoholic. You know, I don't know what happened to him, but I'll be there tomorrow. Well, tomorrow was January 31st, my brother's birthday. January 31st, I remember going to the hospital, and when we hear things, it's like you seeing me today at 5'11" and 147 pounds, and then a month from now seeing me 5'11" and 60 pounds. It's a difference. And it shifted my perception when I saw my brother. And when I walked into the room, I just remember the doctors saying all of these different words: acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, tuberculosis, hepatitis B. And I remember looking at my mother and my sisters and saying to them, well, he is promiscuous, he is an alcoholic, so go figure that this happened to him. Well, June 19, 2007, at 12:34 p.m., I was diagnosed with HIV. And when I was diagnosed with HIV on Roosevelt and Wabash, everyone knows what that is, the Jewel, the Starbucks, Red Line, yeah, right there. My first instinct was to run out in the middle of the street to get hit by a car because of stigma. Because of stigma. And stigma is, my mind went back to 2004 when I remembered talking about my aunt being a prostitute and then later dying. My mind went back to my stigmatizing my family and looking at my brother in his face and saying to my brother, well, you deserve this disease, this dis-ease. And now me being told that I'm a 23-year-old man in the process of graduating a year from now with a double major in psychology and marketing, minor in communications, human development, with about $49,000 in student loans, that I am what I also stigmatized. So that's my story. So June 19, 2007, 3 times I tried to kill myself. I ran out in the street to get hit. That didn't work. I went to my local bar, which is on 18th and Michigan Avenue, Kroll's, and I drank to get alcohol poisoning. Because me being this major in psychology and marketing, I knew how to kill myself. That was what I was an expert at knowing. That didn't work. I remember walking out of Kroll's and bummed a cigarette, and I remember I felt really good. I felt so good. I was drunk. My mind wasn't wrapped around me. It was wrapped around these wine and spirits that I had in me. And I lit the cigarette up, and I remember as I was exhaling, I looked up and I heard this voice say, "You still got HIV." So I called my dealer, because at that point in my life, I did everything you can think of before Atripla, before Norvir, before all of these HIV medications. So I called my homeboy and I'm like, "Man, I need an A-ball." That's cocaine. My name is David Demetrius Robertson. I decided to snort my whole name. That's a lot of cocaine. At that point, I lived at 1620 South Michigan Avenue. Michigan Avenue was my thought. I was like, you know what? I'm a black man. I've never heard of a black man jumping off onto Michigan Avenue. I might be the first, because I cannot look my brother in his face when he saw me at Rosen Hospital telling him that it was his fault that he contracted an infectious disease. I cannot look at my mother and her siblings when I looked at them and said to them, well, she is a prostitute. The reason why she became a prostitute, we later found out, was to pay for her HIV medication. So I got high, really, really high. Booger sugar, whatever you want to call it. I did it. And my anticipation was to jump off of that balcony. And as I went to jump off the balcony, a bird, and anyone who knows people who do drugs, they tweak out. I tweaked out, fell back, busted the glass, and I was gone for a period of hours, 7 hours. And in that period, I remember myself being pulled in 2 different directions. Pulled into a place that I was comfortable in, which was darkness, and then pulled to this glimmer of light that I was not comfortable with. But I remember just being like, what is this? And the next thing I remember, I was standing on the stage, and there was a light. And then I began to focus myself, not on the light, but on the people who were behind the light. And they were people. They were my people. They were children. They were young people. They were human, because HIV is human immunodeficiency virus. And I remember just stepping back and being like, God, what is this? And I remember turning around to walk off, but there's no door. And when I went to turn back, I looked around and I was surrounded by blood. I woke up from that dream, and when I looked up, I saw a glimmer of something that I wasn't used to. I looked up and I see Soldier Field, and the water was glittering. It was glittering something that I did not realize that I had another chance at life. Because I was so comfortable being in my darkness that I ran away from the light. That's my story. That's my dis-ease. And we all in this room have dis-eases. It may not be HIV. It may be depression. It may be you thinking that you can't get through this situation, but remember this, we're human, and we all have dis-eases. So when I came to, I remember me picking out shards of glass out of my leg and out of my hands and going into the bathroom, and I jumped into the shower, and I remember me closing my eyes, and when I opened up my eyes, I saw blood being washed off of me and going down the drain. And that's when I realized why I'm here. And it was to tell you and to tell them and to tell the world that there still is hope, even in hopeless situations. Because I saw the blood being washed off of me, and I refuse to be a murderer and allow for people to put themselves in situations where they can be then called murderers. So over the last couple of years, I've been really dogmatic. I've been real dogmatic. I've been really fervent in my walk to make sure that I've stayed in my lane when it comes down to the advocating and to the activism of HIV/AIDS, but moreover to the foundation of what our community needs to be standing on, and that's hope. And it's really interesting because up until this year, I couldn't understand why I was feeling a pull to the international sector. I couldn't understand why I would go home irritated, frustrated, honestly pissed off that the individuals who have coffee and water and resources and access, they never show up for free help. They never show up for free help. And if there is one thing that I can counteract anyone saying, everyone says nothing in life is free. An HIV test is free.
It is.
An HIV test is free.
It is free.
Confidential HIV testing is free. The information to find out if HIV is in your community is